Beyond the Fence Line, a podcast brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust. Created by landowners for landowners, we're proud to play a role in conserving the Texas legacy of wide open spaces.
Hi, I'm Sandra Velarde, and I lead our fundraising efforts here at TALT. Gifts that are given to TALT stay right here in Texas, protecting open space that will be here for generations to come. Giving to TALT means investing in communities, clean water, and clean air that benefit us all. Please consider a small recurring donation today and be part of that movement that is keeping Texas big, wide, and open. Visit our website to learn more at www.txaglandtrust.org/support.
Well, welcome back to Beyond the Fence Line. This episode is very special to me. Have a good old dear friend and past colleague of mine with us, Mr. Billy Tarrant. He's Associate Director of Stewardship Services at the Borderlands Research Institute there at Sul Ross State University in Alpine. And really appreciate Billy joining us and just to sit here and, chat a little bit and give us a little bit more insight of BRI and all their engagements with the West Texas and especially to our landowner and our private land stewards across West Texas, and really discuss a variety of wildlife research projects as well as some of those efforts that are just kind of wrapping up on a multi-year project of Respect Big Bend, and really looking forward to it. And Billy, appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for having me, Chad. My pleasure.
Well, I just want to remind you that, we are recording and you and I go way, way back. So don't throw either one of us under the bus.
Well said. I will not. I'll do my best.
Yeah, so for you guys, I've known Billy for since the late 90s when I worked for Parks and Wildlife, kind of multiple temp jobs and working with Billy. And then, Billy and I really worked, really closely together, 15 something, I lose track of time, Billy.
Yeah, same here.
15 years or so when I used to still work for Natural Resource Conservation Service and was kind of leading the team out there in far West Texas in the Tri-County area. And Billy was kind of running Texas Parks and Wildlife at the same time. And so really, it's great to catch up and hear kind of where you are today and all the great work there at Sul Ross and the Borderlands Research Institute. So, Billy, why don't we just kind of get started and you kind of maybe give us an overview of BRI and, what is it? And really, I think, why was it created? What's the mission of BRI?
Sure, Chad. I'm going to back up just a second. You just made me realize something. I think reason we probably hit it off so well is that was your first gig, I think, as a supervisor, as a DC out here. And I had just gotten the job as the district leader for the Trans-Pecos. So we were both trying to get a sip off a fire hose, as in our new positions. But anyway, yeah, so BRI was, it's basically born out of the, Natural Resource Range and Animal Science program here at Sul Ross State University. Was established in 2007, kind of along the lines of taking the lead from Caesar Clayburgh Institute. Just the idea that you can have a natural resource program, a wildlife management program at a university, and provide a lot more resources and capacity by having an associated institute that's able to bring in more funding, opportunities for research and partners. And I've got to give credit, obviously, to Dr. Lewis Harbison, who's a dear friend of both of ours for many years. And he had really done such a great job here building this wildlife program, this natural resource program at Sul Ross. This was a natural evolution. And the mission's pretty simple. It's just to help conserve natural resources of the Chihuahuan Desert through research, education, and outreach. And I think you always have the primary focus on an outfit like this is, utilizing good science to make good management decisions, and that's working with any of the managers we have out here, whether it's federal, state, the national parks and WMAs, wildlife management areas and state parks, or whether it's the private landowner constituency that we have, and those partners that make decisions on millions of acres of the Trans-Pecos. So anyway, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, I was telling Lewis, Dr. Harbison, this the other day when we were visiting, that, I was a senior. I was about to graduate when Dr. Harbison came in. And so he didn't have grad students. He didn't have anyone. And so I kind of taught his labs that first semester he was there. And that's kind of when we, really, hit it off and kind of started our relationship. And I was telling him, he had this little office kind of like in a closet, if you remember that. and you had to kind of just, skinny up to get in there. And I remember sitting there one day, asking him, trying to figure out where in the world was, Chad gonna go, and what was that, what did 10 years from now, 15 years from like that. And I remember asking him that same question. And, his first one was like, Caesar Clayburgh, and he kept, he was just very passionate, and he understood that model. And it's been really awesome to see from the outside him take that passion and put it there in far West Texas, which is such unique, great landowners, great country, right? And it's been really great to see, and it's great to see you move over there as well. And I think that's a question I have for you, Billy. I mean, you've been at BRI for a few years now, and you've made this transition to BRI, as you mentioned a little earlier, from Texas Parks and Wildlife, right? As you're sort of that highest ranked leader out, in West Texas. And, why did you make that jump, moving from a position you had to BRI?
I had a great job. There's no doubt about it. I had a great career with Parks and Wildlife as a field biologist over several parts of the state. Most of it was out here in the Trans-Pecos. And then, like we said a while ago, became district leader over all the biologists that work the counties out here. And then the regional director position came available, and I put in and got that. I was fortunate enough to get that position, which then I was, there's 4 wildlife regions in the state, in the wildlife division of Texas Parks and Wildlife, and I had the furthermost west one, basically all the Panhandle, Lower Plains, Permian Basin, and the Trans-Pecos. And great job, great crew, all the wildlife management areas, all the staff. I had over 40 staff that worked for me, and just it was a great job. It was very, very busy. I worked really hard, was on the road a lot. And obviously I'm an old guy with young kids, and that wasn't the funnest thing, but I think you can relate. But anyway,
I relate.
What's that?
I relate to where you were.
Oh man, it's, and that's just part of it, and so, but, really, I'll just say this, the job, at whatever position I've ever had, I've always tried to figure out my strong points and weak points. And I think that's important for growth. And I remember I was sharing with my fellow regional directors privately that this opportunity had come up to move to BRI, and I was probably going to take it. And I told them, I said, this may come as a shock to you guys. I said, but I'm not the best at the administration part of this, as a joke. And they, of course, said, yeah, I never knew that, wow, yeah, sure. And I recognize that, the minutia of policy and purchasing and all the stuff and the bureaucracy that goes on with any large agency was tough. It was not my strong suit, and it was something that I had to work at. So I think I did okay in that realm, but it wasn't natural for me. And what really has been natural for me is building conservation partnerships, working with private landowners, and then building conservation partnerships. And, I've done that several times in my career. As we started the Trans-Pecos Pronghorn Working Group, and gone through all the restoration work that still goes on to this day with that group. And then obviously with the Apply Lakes joint venture, sitting on their management board and sharing their board, which is all about, those joint ventures are all about partnerships. And this was just a opportunity I couldn't pass up, as everybody out here watches this energy development take place, not far from, some of our most pristine, areas of the Trans-Pecos. How are we going to balance that, right? And so that was, if we're going to have energy development and economic opportunity, but we want to continue to have these great landscapes and wildlife populations that we have out here. How do we balance that and make it happen? So it's a big challenge, but I couldn't pass it up. I had to take the chance to do it. So
yeah, I think it was perfect for you, right? It was a hand in glove kind of, I think, situation. I mean, one thing, I've learned and probably, learned from you on this is the value of relationships, right? And we're in the conservation world, but really we're in the relationship business. And
yep.
You've taken that to heart. And I sit there and think of this stewardship service program, and it's about relationships and the way you take that challenge on of working with those individual landowners and all the way up from energy companies and back and forth. I think is pretty amazing and a good fit for you. Can you tell us a little bit more about the stewardship service program and how does it really impact and help the landowners out in West Texas?
Well, it's something that's been on Lewis's mind for a long time, and he had some of his staff work with private landowners when they needed some assistance. And but it was never really formalized until I came on board. And to be honest with you, Chad, very well that Respect Big Bend has been taking a huge chunk of my time, and rightfully so. But it has also been the catalyst to help stand up stewardship services. And so to me, it's a portion of BRI utilizing that same research and science that I talked about a while ago that's we have here, that good information, and working with private landowners to help them meet their conservation goals. And at the same time, not in lieu of the other opportunities that are out there with partners like NRCS or Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. These folks already work with a lot of those conservation partners and others. And so, but we want to provide value. We want to be able to build, and you mentioned a while ago, relationships, and so much of that's based on trust. And sometimes trust doesn't happen overnight. It takes years to get that kind of type of trust that, that we want to work with a landowner to help them further their management goals. And that may be, in the future, obviously, we've got some opportunities in front of us for, helping them with at a much higher level with riparian restoration, grassland restoration, brush control, a lot of the things those opportunities where we have shared values or vision of how we're going to increase and profit from wildlife habitat, and they can see the same profitability and sustainability and resiliency for their ranching operation. So it's really kind of trying to fill those gaps. And honestly, Chad, a big chunk of it I've realized now is something we've talked about for years out here. I remember us talking about this, is providing value for our conservation partners as well,
right?
That are doing that work, because it doesn't matter if it's Parks and Wildlife or NRCS. When you get in a meeting and you want to talk about, working together to collaborate and cooperate on particular projects, there's not enough capacity to really facilitate that, right? I mean, everybody's so busy.
Right.
So too many responsibilities, not enough time to get it done. So I really see stewardship services providing that capacity as well with our conservation partners and filling those gaps in so we can all work together. And really, ultimately, that's what's so cool about a lot of this is you pull all those partners together and we get to try some stuff out. We've got the research capacity here, the monitoring capacity to see how certain practices might work. We've got our conservation partners that are, friends of ours that are willing to work with us, and our landowner partners. All that comes together to just really get some some more cutting edge work done out here and see what really works and can provide the best information to our cooperators.
Yeah, I mean, I see it, Billy, as sort of a hub, right? And, you know, the landowners are busy as well. And there's so much, you know, different partners are doing different things. And it's just hard to keep track of it from a landowner's perspective to even a partner's perspective. And you kind of leading that hub, an essence of partners and landowners and land managers, these land stewards, it just helps, you know, it helps the whole system, I think, and be able to put a better impact, right? I mean, we think about from TALT's perspective, Billy, I mean, we got, you know, we have one guy out in far West Texas with Clay Miller, and he can't be everywhere, right? And he's got his own operation, he's got his own other responsibilities and other things from there, and that it helps having sort of a hub where you can help with that communication and connect the right people on both ends. And so it's great, you know, I think what you guys are doing, and perfect fit for you. I'm happy for you and happy for Lewis. And more importantly, I'm just thrilled for all the land stewards out there having those resources at their hands now.
You bet. Appreciate that, Chad. It's pretty hard. Back to your original question, why would I make the jump? It's pretty hard not to make that jump for me.
Right.
Especially about, as you well know, it's a country that I cherish immensely.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So, yep.
No, that's great. You know, I think, you know, and you kind of mentioned, Billy, about the Respect Big Bend effort. You know, why don't we dive into RBB a little bit and maybe talk about the Respect Big Bend efforts and the different perspectives at the table. You mind kind of sharing kind of an overview of Respect Big Bend? And
yeah, it's dominated my career for the last 2.5 years, and it's hard to summarize quickly, but I can tell you, you know, just kind of backing up a little bit, really this was born out of the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation. Mary Lou Hastings really was the one that kind of had this vision. And you know, looking at and really one of the catalysts was the Alpine high development around Balmorhea, you know, with Apache. Just, you know, that's the first time that we had seen oil and gas development that far into some of this country that's a little more pristine. We also have seen some opportunities with some solar farms going up in the region, and of course wind. You know, so it's not just oil and gas development; it's renewables as well. All of West Texas is prone to a lot of energy development in the future, and the idea is that energy development's not a bad thing, right? It's a good thing. It's good for landowners. It's good for the economic base. It can be a really good thing, and but at the same time, it can also have a huge impact on communities. It can have a huge impact on the land, and we've got these immense ranches out here, the largest landholders in the state, you know, out here. And the reason that we have such good wildlife population, that those, you know, and good habitats, because of those stewards that have kept these working lands working for you know, over 100 years, and have not broken them into the smaller pieces of property or been overdeveloped. And you think about the species we have: bighorn sheep, pronghorn, black bears. They all need large unimpacted areas to operate. And so it was concerning. She saw that. She pulled together, the Mitchell Foundation helped fund and pull together quite a few experts in the field. And the idea was that we think about development, energy development, not at a site by site way that it's always been done, but more at a landscape level. And you've actually pulled in the Nature Conservancy's Joe Kiesicker, you know, with the Nature Conservancy, you know Joe well. He's all over the planet doing this work. It's called Development by Design. You basically pull together folks that know the area, and you build a conservation vision spatially. Actually, you know, it's actual spatial exercise, and then you look and see where development is supposed to occur. You know, you put on a map what you value, you know, what you don't want to see impacted too much, and then you think about what you can live without, I guess is a good way to say it. But how much do you need of that really good stuff? And then you look at energy development projections, put that on top, see where the conflicts are, and go from there. You know, try to start thinking about mitigation. Well, how can we not have maybe certain impacts, we develop more wisely, but at the same time, not discourage development if it could happen, or move development in certain areas, you know. So that was the idea. And the cool part about it is it's driven by locals. We put together a stakeholder advisory group that was basically, we kind of kept the focus in the 3 counties here, Jeff Davis, Brewster, and Presidio counties, and that greater Big Bend region, if you will. And we pulled together some stakeholders, 14 folks, heavy on the rancher side, you know, the working lands, but also community members, community leaders, conservation partners. And throughout the whole process, we had industry folks at the table as well to kind of help guide us on what works and what doesn't. And man, just what a great process. And I mean, I figured out the other day, we're on our 14th meeting now, and I don't think we've had one go less than 2 hours. Most of them have gone 3 or 4. So obviously a lot of time invested by these folks. I like to say, Lewis and I kind of handpicked them because we know these folks around here. We knew the ones that we wanted to have at the table, and they're all busy, right? They get asked to do a lot of this. They're county commissioners. They're sitting on, you know, school board. They're just asked to do a lot of stuff because that's the type of people they are. And as busy as they were, and almost every one of them started off by saying, "I'm really busy." Not a single one of them turned us down. They saw it, they felt it, they knew energy could be, you know, development could be coming our direction. And so they saw it as a great opportunity and had built, I think, a great product from it. So.
Yeah, I'm excited, you know, about this, Billy. I mean, I think the process, as you mentioned, that development by design, bringing all stakeholders together. And I think some of the things, even, you know, out on the Respect Big Bend, that was, I think, eye-opening to a lot of folks is, you know, a lot of values are aligned, no matter if, you know, you're, you know, a librarian in Alpine or, you know, Marfa to, you know, a rancher out, you know, in Jeff Davis County or vice versa. I mean, all the different stakeholders looking at this issue through different lenses are very much aligned through, you know, and I think it just helps build community alignment and, you know, direction for the future. And, you know, I hope to see this model moved across the state. I think, you know, even beyond our state, you know, I think it will help make an impact in conservation and communities across the country. So it's pretty, yeah, it's a pretty neat, you know. And you talked about all the different many partners, and, you know, Talt is one of those partners. And, you know, I think you articulated very well, Billy, the reason why Talt's there, right? I mean, Talt, I mean, we're a producer, you know, formed group around conservation. I mean, when we talk about, you know, private property rights, the freedom to operate, things of that nature, you know, and keeping working lands working, you know, first most important piece is the economic side, right? If we're not economical and we can't keep our business running from a rancher perspective, you know, everything else goes to the wayside. And so, you know, the intersection, and you mentioned this intersection of energy and on our landscapes is a good thing. It's right. It's a good thing for the landowners. It's a good thing for the community, but it's how do we put it in correctly, right? In the right way that we can all meet all of these objectives. And so that's the reason why Talt was there, to be able to help and be support back to those landowners and outreach, and, you know, be able to provide more tools in the toolbox for these landowners to empower them. So
now, and I want to just say, I can't, you know, I'm so appreciative of Talt being a partner in this effort. I think it's been so advantageous to us. I will just, you know, throw a feather in your cap as well. You know, I think the timing of you coming on board as a CEO, I mean, Blair was a great partner with us through this from the very beginning, and the idea that we really need to work however we can to keep these working lands working in West Texas. And then you coming on board with your ecosystem services background and the opportunities that you're looking at there, I think it's been great. You know, I'll just quickly, I'm not going to go. So I want to back up and say, we went through this process and we recognized all these values. And to your point, exactly, they are shared values. It was so cool,
right,
to watch, two people in a room. And I know, and we said from the get-go, we're not, this is not legislative. There's no legislative or policy behind this. This is simply collaboration and cooperation at its best. And I said, we have strong liberals and strong conservatives in this room, and we're not going to bring politics into it. It's just going to be, we're going to see what we can do within the current regulatory framework we have at any given time to work together to make the best decisions. And it was amazing to watch that happen through time, and the fact that they all do share the same values, and why we like living here. And it's not just wildlife based. It's not just, I've been through, you have too, through a lot of conservation planning, and it's usually resource managers, wildlife biologists, range conservationists, whoever may be in a room looking at what's most important on the landscape. You might have landowners involved at some point, but you never have community members involved. But we did this time, and that was, view sheds, things that are important for tourism, and just for why we like these dark skies and everything else that makes this a great place to be. And at the end of the day, while we didn't prioritize any values, they recognized right off the bat pretty quickly that, ranching heritage was kind of an overarching one. These large intact landscapes are based upon large working lands, and we need to incentivize keeping those large working lands intact and working for producers. Along with, we made it very clear, ranching heritage and private property rights, because we, this is a very independent group out here. Them well, and we didn't want to make this appear to be something that it's not. And it's not working to do anything. There's nothing behind it that's going to say what somebody can and can't do on their property. We just want them to have the voice and the ability and to have the economics to continue working. And really, dude, as well as I do, that this terrible drought, I hope we're coming out of it now. We're finally getting some rain, but 2 years of hardly any rain really began to solidify the needs, the concerns that producers have. When you don't have any income for 2 years, and there's not a whole lot of cows left out here now because everybody had to sell. And it's hard to make a living, when that happens. You throw everything else on top of them, it's tough. And so the timing was right, and I think it was so refreshing to watch community members understand that as well, that's so important. Anyway, pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, it is cool stuff, and I think, and I sit there and put my, cowboy hat on and understand from the, that, you go through these situations of drought and you're just trying to make ends meet, and, it's encouraging to know you got champions, in the community that are there for you and backing you, and you want to be successful and not, just one other thing against you. And I think seeing those light bulbs and those alignment was very, had a great impact on everyone, right? To see those shared values. And
I agree.
I think, Billy, a question is, how are, in this process, how are landowners and other stakeholders being involved, and how does that look like? What are their involvement? We understand kind of the partners, I would say partners from, BRI and TALT and others, but how are these community folks, stakeholders, and landowners being involved in this?
Well, like I said, there's the stakeholder advisory group, of course, was made up of, and really they're the kind of the drivers. One of their charges was to go out and visit with their friends and neighbors and make sure that they're speaking as best they can for the majority of folks out here, but BRI also, our responsibilities, I'm going to back up a little bit. Our responsibilities in this process was, twofold. One of it is obviously the science aspect of it, the data, because we have, BRI has such a robust amount of data associated with wildlife habitats, wildlife movements, spatial data, that allows us to see what's going on the landscape from different wildlife species standpoints. And then, so bringing data to the table, bringing science to the table, local, science for West Texas, and then also the stakeholder engagement, which was really fell on my shoulders. And beyond the stakeholder advisory group, we also reached out to community organizations, conservation organizations, landowner organizations, individual ranchers, as many folks as we could possibly talk to throughout the process to make sure that they understand what's going on, what this is and what it isn't, And obviously there was apprehension from some because it's so different. It's pretty weird, people haven't done stuff like this before. But I think ultimately it's been shown that people understand it, support it, and have been very supportive. And I think one of the smartest things we did was put the right people on the stakeholder advisory group who certainly have drank the Kool-Aid now. And they're like, this is good stuff. There's nothing bad here. This could only reap, good benefits. And they've been our champions in the communities and the ranching community and the conservation community. And once again, just working to build that tree. You can't hardly go through a process like this with folks in the room. I think one of our stakeholder advisory group, Greg Carter, said it best. He said, we're having conversations. He says, these are people that you see out here, you might know them, but we don't sit down and talk. We come from two different backgrounds.
Right.
And now we're forced to sit down and visit and have this conversation. And he said, that's one of the most important things we could possibly do, just have a conversation. And they have been, I can't speak highly enough of our stakeholder advisory group members. They have been so supportive and really have, put everyone's minds at ease about this. The bottom line is, if there's something that this was about that was dubious, something or devious, that was not on the up and up, well, they'd be the first ones to know about it, right? And so they're right. And it's not what it's about. It's good stuff. So yeah, so I guess backing up your original question, they've been heavily involved on the stakeholder advisory group, but also we've tried to keep people informed as we move through this process outside that group as well. And it's really come down to, I think our stakeholder advisory group members have been some of our best champions, ambassadors.
Yeah, I think that's key. I think Craig's comments are pretty amazing too, right? It's because you're building more advocates for yourself on both ends, right? And having a better understanding from two different perspectives or two different realms. And it's been really there's been a lot of really good come out of RBB. And I think the report came out a couple months ago, Billy, and what were some of those key findings beyond just some of this communication?
Well, the stakeholder advisory group basically came up with 4 recommendations, and one of them, a couple of really paramount ones is this tool. We built this conservation decision support tool, if you will. It's spatially based. It takes in all of these values. Any value, if you find a corresponding data set that corresponds to a value, and that may be pronghorn habitat, grasslands, sky islands, dark skies, view sheds. They did a view shed analysis. Our nerd herd, our science members that are part of the support team, all these other partners as are part of Respect Big Bend, such as yourself and TALT and TNC and Bureau of Economic Geology, just these different partners that have helped build the data set. So they've got this tool that can help industry and landowners make decisions about where to develop, what areas have a higher value across the Trans-Pecos to everyone, and how do we minimize impacts to those areas, right? And so it also has the projections. And one of the projections we found out was that there's not going to probably be in the Tri-County area a significant amount of oil and gas development in the next 30 years. I didn't realize there's been over 1,000 wells drilled in these 3 counties over the last 100 years. There's a lot of data there, and the technology's not at a point now where it's economically feasible to be pulling that product out of the ground. So probably not a lot of oil and gas development here, but there is areas of other parts of the Trans-Pecos that will see development that have a lot of value. There is a lot of opportunity, especially for solar development. We're just primed for that. we went through this process, and the one that I want to say the second most important thing, and maybe the most important, is they recommended that we provide stand up a center. And so it's a center for land stewardship and community engagement. And it basically housed at BRI as the local convener as we went through this process. Probably keep our SAG together, our stakeholder advisory group together, let them be kind of our sounding board, our advisors for standing the center up. And then that centers will be there for community and members, for landowners, to provide information, and conservation partners as well. It kind of dovetails into a lot of what stewardship services is about, with kind of some of a community aspect as well associated with it. And it's supported by our president here at Sul Ross. It seems like we're about to start rolling it out. It won't be an actual physical center, but it will be something where we're able to add capacity to provide services to folks as they have questions about energy development and conservation. So really helping solidify a lot of what we've already talked about and being that resource, right? And then 2 other recommendations they came up with, which were exceptional as well. One of those is to continue to support this voluntary conservation opportunities whenever they exist, whether that's through TALT and conservation easements, whether that's, some of us, we got so much opportunities, so many opportunities out here right now with grassland restoration, brush control. They're all, voluntary, incentive-based conservation. It works better than anybody. And over my career, it's been the one thing that works. Heavy-handed government regulation doesn't work.
Right.
But working with partners, conservation partners, to help those landowners see economic opportunity and continue keeping those working lands working is vital. It's paramount. And just for the stakeholder advisory group to come out and say, this is important and we need to keep doing this, right? Working with our landowner partners to further their conservation goals, put them on a higher economic platform, more resiliency to the land. That it's going to be what's really achieves the goals that we have for keeping these large intact landscapes intact. And the last one is basically to recommend that whenever possible, when there is energy development, that there's restoration takes place afterwards, and we put the land back as good or better than we found it. So those are your 4 recommendations, are part of the report. I encourage people to go take a look at that. I think they would really like to see that, and I imagine you could provide a link for them, or I can get it to you, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we'll definitely get information.
There's 2 reports. Remember, there's one big one.
Right.
That basically the SAG, the SAG's mentioned in there, but that's a lot of the conservation partners or the respective bid partners, like BRI and others, what we learned through the process and all the technical stuff that went into this spatial analysis. The other one's shorter, and it's by the stakeholder advisory group themselves, and kind of gets to the meat of it. So that second one is, I think, is a good overview and kind of narrows down, doesn't get too far in the weeds, and it's really well done by the SAG group. So really, I guess and I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit, Billy, is what's the next steps for this effort, and I would say the continued involvement of these stakeholders. Well, like I say, the stakeholder advisory group, we hope to keep them on board. Probably not as much of a time commitment as they've given us so far. We've asked a lot of them. And so probably not that type of involvement, but it's for sure providing some guidance to this center as we get it up and rolling. And then, our other stakeholders across the Trans-Pecos, we you and I both are working with our partners at the Mitchell Foundation and others to kind of see where we're moving next and how it's going to work. But, from our perspective, we kind of see the center being the hub for future work out here. And there are areas, like I mentioned a while ago, that we knew it already, and it really came to light that we've got some really pristine, large working ranches and areas of the Trans-Pecos where it's happening now, and there's going to continue to happen, and more development. So working with those stakeholders to see how we can minimize the impact, and if there's going to be negative impacts, let's work towards how we can minimize those and still see some economic opportunity. But so moving outside basically these 3 counties to other areas of the Trans-Pecos, but also, taking a role as kind of, moving outside the Trans-Pecos. And like you mentioned a while ago, we're talking about other opportunities in the state to find those right conservation partners, those right landowner partners and community members. And we're not going to this, this is kind of our backyard, but BRI can help train the trainer, if you will. Yep. Show them, how we were fortunate enough to work through this process, and it worked well. And, standing up your own stakeholder advisory group, if you will, for another part of the state, and going through the process and engaging industry. And because that's paramount, I should mention that. I mean, it's paramount to have industry support, and we've had good industry support so far. I mean, obviously there was some apprehension there too, but they've been great, and I think that needs to continue and expand.
Yeah, I think well stated. I'm excited, and I think you guys can definitely share that model and help facilitate this effort across, other little hubs across the state, and we should see multiple of them. And I'm excited again of you guys' work and the impact you're already making in a short time. I'm excited to see what 5, 10, 20 years from now and what's going on in Trans-Pecos. As we wrap up, Billy, I mean, I really want to hear what's on the horizon for BRI, besides the Respect Big Bend. What are some of the other research projects that BRI is working on or soon to be working on?
It continues, the idea behind, applied management, finding that getting that good science to make the best decisions you can is continues. And we still working on pronghorn. That's been about a decade and a half now. We've been doing a lot of pronghorn research, and there's still things we need to understand, but that will continue. Just trying to, because here 2 more years, we just came out of 2 years of drought, and we're seeing the impacts of it again. And it's just how can we have those species out there in the landscape and make the landscape more resilient for them to be able to survive and reproduce in these times when we just don't see enough moisture, especially a species like that it's so moisture dependent. Standing up, this bighorn aoudad mule deer research that's going on now, that continues to expand. We've got a lot of, I think as well, our aoudad populations in the Trans-Pecos have exploded. We've got a lot of aoudad on the landscape. They're having impacts. We know they're having impacts on a lot of different levels. When you get these large herds of aoudad, they impact mule deer habitat. They also, since they're so opportunistic and can switch back and forth between browse and grass, they end up having an impact on cattle forage too, on grass. So, but that said, like these last 2 years, that may have been the only economic opportunity that landowners had, because their wildlife populations or native wildlife populations were not doing the best, didn't have a lot of reproduction for mule deer or pronghorn. And obviously your cattle operation may not be in the best situation because of drought, but those aoudad keep plugging along. So I'm really excited about that work, because it's going to feed into some of the stuff I'd like to be able to provide landowners. That's something that they come to us and ask.
Right.
Can we have keep a small aoudad population and have some opportunities for hunter harvest and not impact greatly our cattle or deer? So that's important. I'm looking forward to some more results from that research. Grassland birds, that's really blown up, and as you well know, all across the Great Plains in these issues with declining grassland bird populations. This is where so many of them winter, down in our grasslands here. Been some huge land use changes across the river in Mexico that have impacted those grasslands. And they of course have impacts all the way up and down from Canada to Chihuahua. It's just, there's some impacts there, and just continuing to find out what they need. And it's cool because that once again works with our landowner partners, that are stewarding those resources. to build more grassland and build it so that it benefits not only the producer from a cattle standpoint, but also grassland birds. Probably going to start doing a little more bear work moving forward too, just because we continue to see our bear populations increase in the Trans-Pecos, which is a good thing, but they also come with their own set of problems, and trying to figure out how they utilize corridors and move across the landscape, et cetera. So anyway, just more and more of the same that we've been doing, but trying to find those areas where the big questions are, right? Where the Montezuma quail is another one. We continue to work in that realm. So anyway, a lot of good stuff.
I mean, you got a lot of good stuff coming, and I think the key to it all, Billy, is that it's based around a usable science model, right?
Yes, sir.
And I'm a big component about usable science. I've written kind of multiple papers on that, right? So usable science is usable science in that the end user is part of the process from day one, right? And it's a different model than we think about traditional science of, we have good ideas and we study those ideas, and it's 3 to 5 years of data, and then we can't share anything, right? Because we have to we're scientists, we have to publish our paper, and that may take a year or two, and then we can share it. Well, if we think of it from a landowner and a land steward, and we think about wildlife and all of the things that we're trying to work on, they don't know, right? They don't know about even tomorrow. And so by the time that information gets out, it's a little bit too late. And I think I appreciate BRI and y'all's efforts in that you are taking that usable science of bringing in those landowners, bringing in, partners and those end users from day one, and they're part of that whole process of pulling that data and the science together to make informed science decisions. And I think that's what's going to be successful, and that's what's going to help, really empower everyone out there. And appreciate again, Billy, you joining us, and appreciate Dr. Harvison and his vision, and you guys making it happen.
Thank you so much, Chad. My pleasure. I really appreciate this. It's always great to visit with you, and this was no exception.
Yeah, thanks again, and I appreciate our friendship, and excited for us to get to work, closer together as we used to back in the day. For sure.
I agree.
Yeah. So, thanks again, Billy. And I just want to remind our listeners to really rate and review our podcast to really help spread the word about working lands conservation. And please join us again for our next episode, where we're going to have Terry Anderson with Conservation Equity Partners and Greg Simons with Wildlife Systems. And we're going to sit and talk about some other economic opportunities that can come to landowners and managing our working lands and conservation. So till next time, have a blessed one.
Beyond the Fence Line is brought to you by the Texas Agricultural Land Trust, dedicated to conserving the Texas heritage of agricultural lands, wildlife habitats, and natural resources. Find out more at txaglandtrust.org.